Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, Marine Corps veteran and host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff here at the Texas Veterans Land Board. We are proud here on the Next Gen Warrior Show to promote the success stories and the achievements of veterans here in the great state of Texas, as well as around the nation. And I hope that these conversations, these discussions, and the guests that we have on this program allow you to see how to healthfully transition out of the uniform back in your community to continue to lead and serve, as well as how to overcome the difficult obstacles that veterans often face after taking off the uniform. Today, we have a very special guest, Major General Retired David Glaser is the Chief Strategy Officer at Sam Houston State University, where he began that position after 36 years in uniform starting this August. Sir, great to have you on the program today. How are you?
Thanks, Dan. No, I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here at Sam Houston State University, and it's great to be on your show today.
Well, we appreciate you being a guest, and I want to thank you as well for your lifetime of service to the Army as well as to our country. And I'm excited to dive into your experience prior to joining Sam Houston State and coming on campus there. Tell us a little bit about your military service and what drove you. What was the foundational reason and the principle that drove your career in the Army, and what kept you in after those 3 decades of service to our country?
No, great question, and I'm glad to be asked that. So I'll be honest right up front. I joined the Army because I needed money for college, and youngest son of a fireman. My mom was a nurse. My grandfather ran the government agency that provided welfare to the citizens of the county. So I wanted to do something surrounding service. So I went to college in order to get into the FBI. That was my goal, and the Army was a way for me to do that. But what changed was once I came into the Army, and I saw the mission, the vision, and the values of the organization and the people that I worked with, just completely fell in love with it. And the Army gave me opportunities that were beyond my imagination. I mean, sending me to schools, leadership development, opportunities to live around the world. I took great care of my family, and I worked with great people. So, you mentioned 36 years a minute ago. I would tell you it seemed like 4 years, to be honest with me. It was one of those things where if you do what you love, it's not work. And so I was proud to serve and still proud to be a veteran.
Let me ask you this. Can you share us maybe your favorite duty station, a time that you really enjoyed, and then maybe one of your more difficult assignments?
Sure, yeah. Saying a favorite duty station is really tough because all of them bring special friends that you work with. But as far as location, 2 of my overseas tours, and one overseas, one was just outside the continental United States, were Germany and Hawaii. It's just really the opportunity to explore different areas of the world that were so much different than growing up as a kid in Ohio, and getting a chance to take some vacations around the United States, into Florida or a few places. But those were by far my most memorable. Hawaii probably is more special to me because 2 little girls that were born and started off life there, and so that was a great duty assignment. Great people, really close friends still to this day in Hawaii, and something I'd highly recommend that everybody go experience if they have a chance.
Tell us about maybe one of the more, maybe not difficult ones, but a duty station or an assignment that made you grow the most, not only just as a soldier and as an officer, but as a person.
Yeah, I would tell you almost any of the deployment tours, but especially my first deployment to Iraq in 03-04 during the invasion and the stand up. And at least in the team that I got, it was a mix of units. I was a battalion commander then. I had 7 companies underneath me. 3 were out of the U.S. Army Reserve. 2 were out of the U.S. Army National Guard, and 2 were active duty units, one of which was organic to me and one which wasn't. So it was a lot of team building during combat, learning your people, learning their skills and abilities, and just kind of being amazed by the depth of talent that as you really got out there and got to know the soldiers from all walks of life, citizen soldiers,
yeah,
I was in Baghdad, and I had units from Montana, full state highway patrolmen. I had troopers out of New York City, prosecuting attorneys, EMTs, people that were just passionate, electricians, carpenters, people that welders, people that could do anything because of the trades and stuff they were involved in, and then bringing them all together and harnessing those talents. It takes a while, and like any job that you start new, and the intensity of that assignment just kind of made the urgency that much more. So you invested a lot of time to the point of exhaustion, but amazing to see what soldiers would do. There's a scarcity of resources. I mean, literally repairing, 5-ton trucks and stuff along those lines with, some very basic tools, duct tape, which is always a military favorite.
Whatever is nearby at that point.
Whatever's nearby, soda cans that were used to spot weld different areas. I mean, it was truly amazing. So
when were you deployed there again?
So the first time I was in Iraq was 2003, 2004.
Wow.
And
it was at the beginning of the invasion, and you
guys was the invasion in the first year. So
I know this is a difficult jump, but I think it's something that all veterans experience, is that heat of the battle moment, and then the temperature kind of comes down when you get back to the States, but you're still in a somewhat of a familiar setting, right? You're still if you're with your unit, you're still getting up, you may still be drilling, you may still be training. There's obviously not the heightened sense of war. You might not be dodging IEDs or getting in firefights every day, but you're still in a sense of being on guard, especially after learning that mentality for months after months after months while you're being deployed. Now, fast forward, after you have gone through those training exercises, you've developed these leadership traits, and you had these incredible experiences. And then you have to figure out a way to take these lessons and these experiences and then apply them outside of the uniform. Can you talk to us about, for somebody in your position who's in a senior leadership level, what that has been like for you, and in maybe some of the parallels that you have taken from Army life, from deployments, from a senior leadership position, and how you apply that in some of it in an academic setting or in a campus setting?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. I think the things that I can really take away and apply from those settings that we were talking about just a minute ago is really building teams. I mean, that's a huge piece. If you're going to be successful, it doesn't matter what occupation that you go into, the better the teamwork, the greater the opportunity for success within an organization, because everybody's moving towards common goals. The problem solving skills that you learn in the military, because of both the urgency, or in a lot of cases, the scarcity of resources to get stuff done, and learning how to identify problems in order to get towards actually solutions and holding yourself accountable to get those solved. That's a huge piece. So problem solving, critical thinking, teamwork. I think those are three of the most powerful skills that really kind of carry over. The other one, I think, is kind of an unintended consequence of moving fairly frequency inside the military. Because look, every time you go someplace, you gotta rebuild your network.
Yeah.
Right. You got to learn, your platoon sergeant, platoon leader, company commander, how do you get resources? You got to go out and establish those relationships. That's a huge piece of what is a transferable skill outside the military in any kind of occupation you decide to go into. So the networking aspect, which we don't call it that in the military, it's a kind of a normal part of life as you move from assignment to assignment. If you're going to be successful, if you're going to continue to get promoted, you better have that skill to get out there and meet people, because, hey, you're going to need stuff from the logistics guy. You're going to need stuff from the budget guy. You're going to need stuff from the training guy. So you got to have relationships with them.
What do you enjoy most about being on campus there at Sam Houston State?
It's the people, it's the mission.
Yeah.
So it kind of the parallel is I was looking for something I could be passionate about. What really made me love the Army So it was people, the mission, and the values. So I was kind of looking for something that I could get my arms around, and I was working my network. A friend of mine actually told me about this position as it was opening because he had worked with the president of the university when she was the president of a different university in Tennessee. And
Right.
he talked about how good she was and, mission command and how she empowered her people. And, she really worked collaboratively, building a vision and moving in that direction and just holding people accountable, expecting them to go out on their own and do great things. And then the piece about taking somebody that's, a young person full of potential and helping them attain their dreams. So that's what the university's mission was. The work environment was correct. And then the people I met that were part of the team were all collaborative, smart, just great people that wanted to help you succeed as you came on board. So it was I knew that when I did the first 2 or 3 interviews, that this was the right place. It was just getting to an agreement on, what the roles and responsibilities would be.
Let's go back to the teamwork piece, because you've hit on that a couple times, and it's something that must be different from being a battalion commander. Teamwork looks different than it does as a general. So can you talk about what teamwork, maybe the differences between teamwork at a fire team level or a squad or a company level versus strategic teamwork, where you're overseeing a network of maybe 5 or 10,000 different soldiers? And did you have different ways of building up those teams when you're working with very closely with individuals day to day versus when you're stepping back a little bit more and you're having to see a larger organization, but again, you're still trying to build out teams?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question too. So luckily I had good mentors and people that would kick me in the rear end when I went in the wrong direction, but bring me back and use it as a learning experience and set me on the right path. I think the leadership qualities that you develop, even at the lowest levels, are applied no matter where you are in life. It's just that your focus is different. And I had great leaders talk to me about it, because you don't need a general being a squad leader or a platoon sergeant. Really, the general is supposed to be the guy that makes sure that the squad leader and the platoon leader, platoon sergeant, can actually focus on growing soldiers. So when you get to the strategic level, it's really about shaping the environment and providing the resources that are necessary to achieve those priorities. And if the squad's that your number one thing that you got to have, then you got to make sure that, do my squad leaders have the time? Do they have the resources in order to achieve the mission or the vision or the mission that you've been assigned? So it sounds easy when you describe it. It's a little bit tougher, but it's about the same things we talked about. It's identifying where it is the organization is going to go. Once you've identified where the organization goes, what really are the priorities to get you there? Because you're going to have a lot of different people tell you that, hey, here's 10 things that we got to do. We got to do to get there. But you can't do 10 things at the same time. Right. You do about 3. And it's those 3 that you got to move towards to get after it. So it's no different from a squad leader. It's just, or a platoon sergeant, or company commander, battalion commander. It's just at each level, your focus gets broader. And it's more about, instead of focusing down laterally, especially when you get to the general officer level, it's about focusing up.
You just hit on something that I think is really interesting, which is defining your goals and maybe what your strategic, I guess your imperatives are, or the primary mission that you have. And you talked about, hey, I can't focus on 10 things. I can focus on 3. Can you talk about the importance of that in not just maybe a senior level leadership, but also for lower levels? I think that's something that can really be applied to veterans as they transition out of the military. And if you don't mind me kind of elaborating on this a little bit before you respond and get your thoughts on it, is when I got out of the military after just being in for 5 years, all of a sudden I was faced with almost a boundless, not just boundless opportunities, but boundless and endless decisions to make. Where are you going to live, what you're going to eat, where you're going to go to school, all of these different things. And then once you get on campus, groups that you want to be a part of, friendships that you're going to build, even simple things is, just going to the grocery store, right? Where you don't have to go to the chow hall. So you go from a military life where as an E4 and E5, you have maybe 3 or 4 or 5 things that are very strategically or personally important to you. And then you get out and then you have a bunch of things that are important to you and that you're learning them all at the same time. Did you have maybe a method for you to be able to kind of hone down on the 3 or 4 or 5 most important things and then focus on those before kind of attacking maybe those important items or those important tasks that just lay outside of those really important core ones to accomplish?
Yeah. So Dan, I would tell you that I got beat into me over the course of the years, and mostly by a couple of Marines that I worked for, who were Marine reservists that also spent time on active duties. These guys were incredibly successful. And it's interesting that they both lived by the same rule, and it was called the rule of 3. And they would often tell me, and one guy's name was Doug Stone, and the other guy's name was Burke Whitman. And they would tell you, Dave, it's proven psychologically that a human being can process at any one time and stay focused on about 3 tasks. That's really the maximum. He goes, you can find some outliers that can do a few more. You find some people that can do a few less, but the vast majority of people, your soldiers, can stay focused on about 3 things. And if you keep them focused on those 3 things, and those 3 things are moving you towards where you want to be with your organization or with your life, then you can knock them down. And as you knock one down, you pull another one in. And then you continue. And what you find is you make very rapid progress towards what it is that you want to get done. So I'm not the most intelligent person. So it took me a while to really kind of work that into my own personal life and battle rhythm. I was a little bit better about doing it inside the organizations I ran.
Yep.
But at home with 4 kids, wife, constantly moving, I always had this list of about 10 things. My sons, my daughters, and my wife, they all got stuff they want me to do and prioritize life. So I didn't do that as well. You can get feedback from my family, and they'll tell you the same thing. Until I starting to apply the same rules that were helping me in the military to my private life. And that helped me through transition as well, as you talked about all those different opportunities. We sat down and talked to everybody in the family. You really want to do something outside the military. What is it that we want to do? What's important to us? Is it location? Is it position? Is it the amount of work? Is it the type of work? And then we sat down, we prioritized those. And then once we did that, we just put the 3 at the top that were most important, even though there were 18 on the list, 18 different things that were a priority to the family. And then we just started knocking them down. And it has worked for us in our life to do it that way. And because the priorities are on the refrigerator, everybody sees them. And we talk about them, if we sit down for dinner or we're at an event, and hey, we're doing that, or we're moving in that direction, or we're not. So it's always a point of discussion. So there's a little bit of transparency, but it's the prioritization, I think, that really helps.
Let me, that's a great explanation. And I'm glad you said that. And one thing that kind of stood out to me was that you wrote them down. And that's something that I would encourage veterans who are getting out of the military. When you do have these kind of like endless amounts of tasks or things to accomplish, which is much different than military life, writing them down, I think, is a great way to visualize the route that you're going. And then you said you check them off. But I think writing is, at least for me, is very helpful to be able to process what I'm going through. And I kind of wanted to ask you, as a leader, do you write? Do you read? And what do you do to kind of just maintain intellectual sharpness, even maybe if it's kind of outside of the day-to-day work that you're doing there at Sam Houston State?
Yeah. So I I would tell you that I'm intellectually curious, so I read kind of a broad spectrum of different things, although not from the standpoint of, I don't read a lot of books. I read books, I read books on teamwork, I read books on leadership. Sometimes I read history books because I'm a history buff, but really what I like to read is different blogs, or I'm very much into technology and how it's going to impact society and where we live, and how, what opportunities are being created, and what are threats that are being created. And then inside the jobs I'm in, how do I hold those discussions with the people I work for? And I found across time that everybody's interested in technology. So when I bring that into the discussion, it usually gets people talking, and then it kind of builds the conversation, and we just kind of have fun with it. So it's just a way of building relationships that we do with. So I'm active on social media. So you'll see me on LinkedIn, especially. So there's things in there that I write about. I write about leadership. I write about veterans issues, and how we help each other and challenge each other to get involved. I put a post out on Veterans Day about how do we continue to give back. I'll give you a great example of that. Look, when I had great mentors that stayed mentors long after they were out of the military, and helped me throughout my career. But when it came time to transition, they were just incredible. And they connect you to your network, and they'd say, well, I know this guy, and I'm going to connect you to him. Then they'd send an email, or they give me the phone number. I'd call them. And I probably did that over the course of a year. And nobody ever turned me down to sit down and talk with me, 30, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, multiple times. It was just incredible, the number of people that were out there willing to help each other. And the one message I always heard is, look, when you get out, turn back around and help the next guy, help the next gal. So it's about that kind of caring and giving nature that you saw was kind of a value in the military. It didn't matter, inside or outside the military, no matter who I got connected to, I received the same kind of attention. And I'm trying to do that, live up to those kind of standards now by putting myself out there, whether it's to college students, veterans that are here on campus, or people I know that are still in the military, reaching out to me through different social media platforms, connecting and helping them with their transition.
So one thing that I do think that has really progressed in veteran and military culture is just the wherewithal to be able to reach out, to ask for help, to connect people. And like you said, to the technology aspect of it, I always encourage veterans, go on LinkedIn, create a profile, connect with people, and ask for help. And if you are doing those sorts of things, as you mentioned, someone else will set you up and help you be successful after the military. And I don't think success is necessarily, about pay or about prestige, but it's about being the best version of yourself after taking off the uniform. And I do think it is something that from the top levels of the military down to, the E4 and E5s who are getting out of the service, it is something that has progressed, and it is something that has gotten better. And I do think that we should take some time to acknowledge that. And I think what you just brought up is true, right? That people are there, people do want to help, and people are asking for help in ways that maybe 15 or 20 years ago was not as common.
You gave a great description. I think what you said is exactly right. And then what we can do individually is just help facilitate that by making ourselves available and having frank discussion. So I probably did 50 phone calls at least over the course, especially over the course of the last 6 months prior to getting out. But it's amazing as I talked to all those individuals who had transitioned successfully, that their message were the same. They talked about the period of stress as you're going through transition, and how hard that was, and that resume writing is important, but doing the network piece was really the piece that made them successful. And then continuing to do the network piece even after you're in your first job, because most of them told me in 50% of the cases, they didn't get it right in their first job. because maybe when they sat down and wrote kind of the priorities and what they prioritize as important, you mentioned before, maybe it was money over mission.
Yeah.
And when they got into that job, the money was good, but they weren't satisfied. And after a year or so, they decided, the mission's more important to me, and then they switched careers. But it's by talking to people that have done it before that can help you get it more close to correct up front, or to help you understand that the stress you're going through, if you didn't get it right up front, it's not unusual. It's the vast majority of people, and that's perfectly okay to continue to look for a job. Because I did 36 years in the military. I thought, hey, when I find a job, I got to do this for the rest of my life. Well, that's not what you have to do. You have to find something that's fulfilling, that you want to do, that you feel great about contributing to.
I'm glad you said that, and I want to go back to you hit on a couple of things, so I want to talk about all of them, but I know we're short on time. We don't have all the time in the world, but I want to hit on a couple things. One, were the calls that you're making, were they just cold calls, and what were those calls like? Because I think for a lot of veterans, as you mentioned earlier, in the military, your network is there, your network is around you. You can go to the supply chief, you can go to the intel shop, you can go to wherever you need to go. But are you reaching out and making cold calls to people and just introducing yourself? And then the second thing that I thought was really important, what you said, and I talk about this a lot with veterans and in our community, that if you don't find the right groove when you first get out, that doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means it's a learning step in your transition of getting out of the military. So if you don't mind, maybe reflecting on both of those.
Sure. As far as the networking piece, I'm at least in the people I talk to, I can't remember a single instance. Well, I can remember one of cold calls or just an outreach that led to anything substantial. Really, what it was deciding, and this is kind of the hard thing to do, kind of deciding 4 or 5 areas that you think you're interested in, because that's the first question you're always asked when you call somebody. Well, what do you want to do? And I would tell people, don't limit yourself, but at least with the people you're going to call, get it down to 1 or 2 things. Like, I'd like to work in the energy sector or the banking industry. And then of course I'll say, well, what do you want to do in that? And then have it, and then they're going to ask you, well, how can I help you? And then you'll say, well, do you know anybody in those industries you might be able to connect me with that I can do an informational interview with? You never tell people you're looking for a job. That's the advice you're going to get over and over and over again. What you're going to do is you're going to go in and you're going to get connected for an informational interview. And then you're going to let your passion pour out about, why are you interested in the energy sector? Well, I'm really, passionate about coming up with alternative forms of energy so that we have sustainable, renewable resources. The nation can be energy independent so that our national security doesn't depend on others. And then just by having thought through those things and telling this person, they're going to ask you more about your life, and you can bring out your ability to solve problems, your effectiveness building teams, all those soft skills which employers are looking for. So it's an informational interview, but you're highlighting everything that is important to anybody that's out there looking for people that are dedicated, people that show up for work on time, people that can solve problems, people that are passionate about the mission that the industry is involved in. And then, they'll say, and then at the end of the interview, you say, well, is there anybody else you'd recommend I talk to? And they will connect you to somebody. But what their takeaway is, hey, if I'm looking for somebody, this guy or gal is passionate. They have knowledge of the industry. And as everybody kept telling me, you're not going to hear anything in a week, 2 weeks, but a month down the road or 2 months down the road, you're going to get a call. You're going to get a call, whether it's from somebody they connected you to or somebody else, because you impressed them. So the power of those phone calls and reaching out and telling your story, weaving in with your passion for whatever the position is what's going to get you opportunities.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Sam Houston State. Tell us a little bit about, what campus is like. And I know you mentioned that you're there and you love the people and you just love, I think one thing about academic life and campus life is the optimism that the students have to be able to pursue a new career or their transition from high school into college and starting a career and building a new network of friends and of peers and of colleagues going forward. And one thing that I loved about university life, I was a student here at the University of Texas in 2013 to 2017. One thing that I enjoyed about it that was different from the military is that how many just different people were around. So I was in an infantry unit, and I was a security force unit. So those were the guys that I was around, you know. But when you go to campus, all of a sudden you can walk into the science building, and you can walk into a biology building, and then you can walk into the health building, and then you can walk by the football field and you see the athletes. And that was one thing that gave me an enjoyment, right, of being on campus. And you know, I get to walk around without a shave like right now, and I got to have a white t-shirt on where, you know, I might have gotten yelled at by first sergeant if I was walking around the barracks. But it was just even maybe some of those intangible things that I enjoyed about being on campus. Can you reflect on some of those since your time there?
Dan, so when I came up and I started, you know, looking at the job, got invited for an interview. So I hit the campus, and it's exactly what you described. So the campus is walkable. It's about 22,000 students. You can pretty much cross it from, you know, the far side, student dorms, all the way to the athletic complex on the far west end in about 8 or 10 minutes. I mean, it's easily walkable. And as you're crossing that with the trees and the just beautiful scenery and students sitting out everywhere in small groups talking, and you're passing all the different, you know, College of Education, College of Business, College of Arts and Sciences. All these different conversations are taking place about these different subjects, Greek life and things along those lines. It was just a lot of fun, and the energy level that surrounds them, like you were describing, very optimistic, hoping for their future, thinking about how they improve their lives and make an impact. That just kind of caught me. And then,
Yeah,
you know, around Sam Houston State, which is very reflective of, you know, the state itself. I mean, it's 51% minority, you know, Black, Hispanic, Asian. So that drew me felt like the Army. Felt
yeah,
very similar to what I was used to. And then it's almost 60% first generation. Now,
wow,
first generation, for people that don't understand what that means, is none of their parents or possibly grandparents had attended college before. So kind of the spirit of optimism and hope is just even that much more. So that's one of the things the university here prides itself on: small class size and student services to ensure student success for first generation students. That's the kind of people that I was with in the Army. I mean, a lot of these people were just like me. I was looking for a way to get to college. That's what I see here, and a lot of our students work. So setting up the programs and kind of the alternative class schedules to facilitate that. I was like, man, you know, God has steered me in the right direction.
yeah.
To out here and talk to these people after spending a lifetime of service in the Army. So, you know, I'm extremely grateful to have had this opportunity and to be part of this university. You know, I didn't really know what to expect. I hadn't been around a university since I attended one in the early 80s, and wasn't know what this, but it felt like home as soon as I got here. And the people have just been wonderful, and the students are great.
Yeah. So let me ask you a little bit more on that perspective. Can you tell us, you know, the chief strategy officer, can you talk to us about maybe a couple of things that you're excited for, whether it's the growth of the university at large, or maybe just some goals or initiatives that you're working on for the students, the individual students?
But so I'm not sure we're that far along. So we have a strategy that was created by the administration before President White. And when she came on, she wanted to take the time, do the process over again, and really think about the future and what it means to Texas with all the changes and with the way the world is changing, the country is changing writ large, and say, do we affirm the mission and values that we currently have, or do they need to be modified because we are a regional state college and our region has grown exponentially and changed in part? And are we serving the communities that we are designed to serve in a way that we should be done? I'll give you a great example of this. When White was here, so before Lisa White is our current president, she looked around, and although we serve some major urban centers such as Houston, we also serve a large part of the rural community. And one of the glaring weaknesses or shortages was primary care physicians. Well, we didn't have any medical school here. And the medical schools that were centered in Houston were producing doctors that really were focused on more specialty care, not rural primary medicine. So we started a college of osteopathic medicine to produce primary care doctors for the rural communities of East Texas. So that, as we're going through our exploration phase, was what we're doing right now, which we're going to, provide a restated vision, restated mission, and relook the values to see if they're currently exactly what we want, or they need to be tweaked. That involves students, faculty, alumni, major donors. Everybody's involved in this process. It's been going on for about 4 months. It'll go into the January timeframe where we'll publish those. And then with that new vision in hand and restated mission and values, we'll be able to create those priorities, which are cross-institutional, to move us, and there'll be 3.
There you go. There you go. Yep.
Where's the vision? And then we'll focus on those, creating goals that are attainable, and we'll measure those over the course of kind of a 2 to 3 year time frame, and then build towards those. As we knock the goals down, we'll update them on a recurring basis throughout the course of the year. So that's where President White has us moving, and that's why she created a chief strategy position, so that it was university wide. Because we had a lot of strategies, but they were kind of embedded in academic affairs. So each of the colleges had a strategy to advance their things. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we have all the strategies that are aligned towards where the university wants to go.
Can I ask you to talk about the impact of technology? Because you mentioned earlier that one of the things that you enjoy is spending time on blogs or reading articles and books on technology. And it's something that I think probably the students there at the university have grown up with technology in their hands, with iPhones, and we hear almost on a daily basis or a weekly basis now about the metaverse, about blockchain technology, about cryptocurrencies, and just artificial intelligence. I've been reading an interesting book with one of the former founders of Google, Eric Schmidt, talking about AI and in the way that AI will affect our work and will affect our life, and will obviously affect the students that are there on campus in the next 25 to 50 years. I know that's a really broad question, and that's a lot of different topics, but it's something that I think almost on a daily basis, we're beginning to see the impacts of technology on our workforce, as well as, obviously we've seen it during the pandemic, the opportunity to be able to talk with you here on a Zoom call to record this interview. There's been some incredible opportunities that have opened up to students as well as to our workforces. But is there anything that, as you read the articles, as you read blogs, and as you read books, that have kind of caught your attention, and maybe something that you're focusing on as impact, as technology does impact workforces, and then eventually the students there on campus?
Yeah, and it's as broad as you just described. So it is going to come back to the prioritization of how we look at the overall changes that are taking place in technology. I would say that the most immediate piece that the university is working on, and a number of universities, is just what you described, because students do live in the digital space continuously. They don't carry books, right? My 2 youngest are still in high school. They don't have to have a backpack anymore because they got the Chromebook, right?
Yeah.
Everything's on there. They take their tests on their Chromebook. All their books and literature. When they tap into books, there's augmented reality. So you're reading text, and then you click on the embedded history scene, and a video pops up, and you're in the video. You're actually there at the Battle of Bunker Hill, with people moving and things like that. It's showing you all the lines. So we didn't have that when we were growing up. So and that's just scratching the surface of what it is. So it's about how do you deliver and build on the delivery systems to make sure that you're building students with all the skills they need to succeed in life, both technical and personal. So problem solving, teamwork, all those things. Can you do that virtually? I would say you can. Not great with the current technology, with the technology that's coming. If we integrate that properly, then there's a lot of things we can do to advance. So we're really thinking through how we do that. One of the things about our online programming is that we focused on quality, kind of like the whole Chick-fil-A thing. A better product, people will come, they'll pay a little bit more for great customer service and a quality product. So that's where we're kind of focused at, and really going out there to see how we bring on board the latest technology so that you have a good campus experience, but it's a hybrid learning. Sometimes you're in person, and other times you're virtual, and maybe that virtual is an avatar, and maybe you decide when you're going to be there in person or virtual. So it's all those things that are being thought through. But let me talk about kind of the broader perspective.
Please.
Broader perspective of technology is, how is it going to impact, what are the required skills that are going to be out there? So I had a great discussion yesterday with the head of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, who's 7,000 employees short inside of that. And really what it looks for is when we're had a discussion on opportunities that are coming. Well, everybody's following that, the trucking industry is about to go autonomous. Taxis are about to go autonomous. There's a lot of robotization that, of deliveries and everything else that's going to take place. Well, that's hundreds of thousands of people. How do you reskill them and give them opportunities and stuff where we're not that far along with the types of advancements into robotics or AI, and get them interested in coming to a fulfilling career in your department? So it's taking those technological advances and thinking forward in space and time to provide people opportunities, but you got to create the programs here to reskill them.
Right.
And it's not a 4-year bachelor's degree. Maybe it's a certificate or stackable certificates that lead towards credit hours that get you towards an end state that gets you fulfilling employment. That's something all of higher education is thinking through right now, because the rate of technological change just continues to speed up. So.
No, I appreciate you reflecting on that, because I think it is something that you discussed. It seems like it's speeding up, and it is a part of our daily lives now, whether it is education or whether it's entertainment or just on a day-to-day basis. It is having a greater impact, whether it's on school or work or, even having conversations like this. And I appreciate you coming on the program today to talk about a wide scope of impacts of technology, your thoughts on leadership and teamwork, as well as an incredible and distinguished military career. Before we let you go, I did want to allow you, though, to provide a last word, maybe something we didn't get to hit on that you would like to leave the audience with.
Yeah, so really my final thought, especially is it's focused on veterans. And it's a part we talked about a little bit earlier, but it's about reaching out. It's just, you're thinking about transition. It doesn't matter if you serve one tour in the military or 15 years or 30 years. Think about your transition earlier, because you already had a lot of stress in your life. The military is a tough job, very rewarding, great people, but there's a lot of stress. Don't want to add that stress by not thinking about how you want to properly transition. There's lots of services that are available, an incredible amount of services. Explore them, tap into them, and then tap into your network to assist you with your transition. So you got to do some work if you want to get it right, but it's worth it in the end. So I encourage you all to do that, to reach out and use people like Dan and I to help you with the transition, or to connect you to those people that can.
Absolutely. Well, sir, thank you once again for being on the program with us today, and hopefully we'll have you back on very soon to continue the conversation and update us on life there at Sam Houston State University.
Thanks, Dan. Really enjoyed being on here, and anything I can do to help.
Absolutely. On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board, thank you for joining us once again here on the Next Gen Warrior Show. Please follow us at Voices of Vets on social media as well as your favorite podcasting platforms. And we'll be back here once again next week. Until then, we'll talk to you soon.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior Podcast.